Yeah.
Hello.
Sure.
How you doing?
Hello. Dave,
Morning, morning.
we saw the new trailer last night.
Okay.
We saw R2-D2 and C-3PO in that trailer.
Yes.
And this was one other character we saw in that trailer.
Yeah, very similarly.
Obviously,
Tell
Ralph
us who you're
McQuarrie's early
showing.
design of C-3PO.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the name of this character or anything about this character we saw in the trailer last night?
I can't. No. I mean, really, I'll be honest with you. It's ultimately a background element character, not a main character. But Killian and I, in trying to bring Ralph's designs to life, our initial instinct, wow, we get to work in the original trilogy era. Let's make a TIE fighter. So we made a TIE fighter and a stormtrooper, and we stayed very true to what they were in the films. But I was like, we want this to look more like Ralph's, and we didn't want to go so far away from it that we did like Ralph's stormtroopers, right? Because they look very different. So we had to have.
They had lightsabers.
They had lightsabers, right? So we had to have,
That would have been cool.
we had to have the classic ones. But it's conceivable that we'll actually put Ralph's in at some point because it's so distinctly him. Our Star Destroyer is a little more like Ralph's. Our TIE Fighter, we clipped the wings shorter so the pod's bigger, like the way Ralph drew it off the Kenner toy when he was illustrating later. And then I know Killian loves that droid, the protocol droid. So
it looks like the Metropolis robot.
the Metropolis robot. So we created that. We created a clear dome astromech like Ralph had originally designed R2 to be. Chopper has elements of Ralph's original design in it. So we are mining everything we can, and not just from Ralph. We look at John Muller's old sketches. We look at what Joe Johnston. Our Scout Walker is actually a Joe Johnston drawing that I saw in the Empire Strikes Back sketchbook as a kid. I was like, wow, that one's a little bit sleeker and smaller. And so it's the most guilty pleasure, awesome part of my job. I get to make these things that I always wanted to see, and that's been a lot of fun for me, and it continues to be so.
Can you tell me why I get this strange feeling that when I see the Ghost Crew, I'm thinking about the Serenity Crew on Firefly? Can you tell me why I might get that feeling?
I think it's when you're doing this type of space saga story, you're just going to have things that are relative to it. When I look at shows like Firefly and Star Trek, I mean, there's a genius to the way that they produced those shows and told those stories. I mean, that's a huge thing that I think people don't consider. It's like, yeah, I would love to jump to every planet in the galaxy. That's not possible. The budget would just burst. You just can't do that. So I think that they were ripping on a great kind of banter between the crew, and that crew really made you feel like I love these characters and I want to go on the journeys with them. And I think it's not borrowing a bit, it's just smart to do, but that was what the classic trilogy was. Han, Luke, and Leia. You can't really say one without the other. I mean, Sabine, Ezra, Kanan, we got to get people up to that level with these characters so they're invested. And it's great if you get that feeling because that was a great show. It's always nice to be compared to awesome stuff. So I'll take it. I'll take it. We all got similar challenges producing this kind of stuff.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about what's different animation-wise on this show from Clone Wars, and maybe a little bit about what you learned on those Clone Wars doing Star Wars animation that you're applying to this show.
So much.
Which I'm sure we can talk about for
Oh
hours.
my God, yeah. I mean, I worked on Clone Wars for about 9 years, total 8 years. From the opening film, the animation I think was very stiff and rigid, and the characters were very angular, and that was like an experimentation in design sense. And George wanted to push things like people hadn't seen before. So I don't think the animation on Clone Wars really rounded out to what I imagined it to be till we got to like the end of season 3, part of season 4. Where we had changed the rigging system pretty significantly to get the hard edges to feel softer. So when we did this show, Killian Plunkett, who was on Clone Wars with me, he's my art director now at Rebels, and we wanted to attack this in a kind of more, I guess I'd call it animation-friendly way, but these characters are a bit more rounded in shape. They have more exaggerated expressions than anything we did on Clone Wars. Clone Wars was very lifelike and realistic. But I wanted to capitalize on some of the bigger expressiveness that you can do in animation. Some of that was influenced, I'll be honest, by the movie Tangled, because I thought the animation in that was fantastic. It was really something where I thought someone had taken what they did in 2D and just matched it brilliantly in CG. And so I thought, well, haha, we're part of Disney now, so we might as well look at that, and it's fine. So we did, and so we borrowed a little bit from that, but it's about feeling it more. And I think that these character designs look more like what people expected the first time around. from an animated Star Wars universe. You know, I love anime and Miyazaki stuff, so there's a bit of that influence in the type of round shapes you see of the faces and the character shapes as opposed to the angles in Clone Wars. And the texture style is very unified in this show. Everything is like a digital Rapaport brush that we recreated. So what the same brushes that the guys design with are the same brushes that the objects all get painted with now. And you can even see, like in cockpit interiors or on the characters, like look like pencil lines. Because Ralph put on as a final level, do some pencil lines on top of his gouache, and so we recreated that. You know, just unapologetically put it in there because I'm very interested in pushing CG more and more and more stylized.
Sure.
And you know, we were a little bit there in Clone Wars, and this has taken another step. But I think there's even more expressive, kind of extreme things we could do visually that are going to be exciting in the future. Some things you see more independent animation houses doing, some things you see like anime stabbing at all the time in dramatic ways. And since we're a Lucasfilm animation, I think that also would create a great, nice separation between us and like Pixar and what Disney does, you know, because we all want to be a little bit unique.
That's quite interesting, Dave, because I think people expect animation to go almost the opposite direction and go more photorealistic as that technology develops. Is that a I won't say a struggle, but is that a struggle for you to keep the stylization and to say?
I'll tell you why it's a struggle is because almost without fail, all the software seems designed to make things photorealistically. So no matter what you try to do, like we render our stormtroopers in that set, you glance at them, they almost look like photorealistic stormtroopers. And, you know, that's great on one level, and it's exciting. I see people do some amazing photorealistic stuff. I mean, Rango was really well stylized, and it was incredibly photoreal. So there's some really interesting styles coming out of the photorealistic expression. But, you know, I guess for me, I would just like to see things go even, you know, animation, I can do literally anything. And if we make it believable, people accept it. There are going to be these incredible Star Wars movies coming out that are going to be photoreal because they are real. And so it's like you don't want to compete with that. You want to make something that's visually distinct so that it makes it worth watching, not just because of the story, but because, oh, that's an interesting style. So it's a challenge, but, you know, I still haven't got to push things as far as I would like, and because, you know, it's risky when you do.
Storytelling wise, Clone Wars was very modular. It skipped around on timelines, and this feels like it's going to be much more linear, like something like Robotech. How is it working? Like, what's the difference in working on a show like that with one story goal in mind?
I think it's actually pretty rewarding. Clone Wars was very hard because we would spend like 4 episodes like that's a movie, and then here comes another movie, and here comes another movie, and it was almost sad because you would start to see the audience investment in that character group, and then it was done. Or you would see, like, you know, you get a whole, it was, the online's awesome. You go, they did 4 about droids. Horrible, why are you doing this? And some people, I love it. And it's like, well, like it, hate it, whatever you do, it's going to be over in 4 episodes, and we'll try this group of characters. So, you know, I guess it's interesting in that if, you know, you really want people to like this group. And yeah, I was obsessed with stuff like Robotech when I was a kid. Part of that whole thing was week to week checking with these characters. Actually, it was day to day back then. And, you know, I would love to see that. It's the evolution of these characters that I find most interesting. It makes it hard for stuff like screenings last night. So you're sitting there and the audience is watching and you forget this is their first step. Meanwhile, we're already at the end of their first season making it. Like, oh gosh, if they just knew where this is going, they're going to get such a bigger kick out of this along the way. So, you know, it's fun. I'd say it's much more fun because George allowed me to experiment in, you know, detective stories, murder stories, big political dramas, creature shows, zombie shows. So everything in Clone Wars, it's like a master class in filmmaking led by George is saying, okay, Dave, this week you're going to make a Godzilla movie. Okay. This week you're making zombie films. This week is Seven Samurai. So you really pushed your directing mind to tackle all these different, you know, genre. And now we're just telling kind of what is, to me, very classically serialized Star Wars again, which I love, you know, a lot. So, but you saw in the clips yesterday that the Harris Sabine clip is a lot more tension, suspense, alien kind of thing than what anything we saw in the movies. So variety is good, but I love sticking with one character group.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, guys, thank you.
Thank you.